All right, everybody, we'll go ahead and get started here. Got a couple of things to run through. Just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. We got a great presentation for Matt Trickle over at North Carolina State University, so excited to see that. Wanted to go through a quick team update here before we get started. So I'm Wiley Coleman. I've had the good fortune of working with most of y'all on the phone. You may have worked with other people on the team, but I think I've been able to work with most of you throughout the years here. I'm the Director of Sales for Higher Ed and Healthcare here at FMSystems, and most of you have been working with Paul McGregor for about the last year and a half or so. Paul has moved into now what we call our industry manager role here in the last few weeks, where he's going to be responsible for working just with our new client base at this point, so trying to continue to expand our presence in both higher ed and healthcare, and he'll be working in the central U.S. territory. And with that, we're excited that we've been able to move John Ozturk into the role of account manager for the higher ed and healthcare team. John's been working on our business development team for the better part of the last year and has a really great background in higher ed. He came to us from Blackboard, so he knows your world well, and I think you'll find him to be a really valuable asset here. So excited to introduce y'all to John. I think a lot of you probably had the chance to talk to him on the phone. We're still working our way through making introductions, so some of you may not. So if you haven't heard from John, you'll be hearing from him in the next few days.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. As Wiley said, I know that I've spoken with some of you, and I'm really excited to speak with everybody else in the coming days here, and really excited to work together on being your advocate for anything at your university or college, helping with any initiatives you might have, and kind of being that main point of contact, just how Paul was, and moving forward, making sure that all your projects and all your needs are getting met. So with that, I also wanted to go ahead and introduce everyone else on the call. So if you could just go back one slide, Alicia. Thank you. So we also do have Paul McGregor on the call with us, your legendary account manager. So thanks, Paul, for joining us. Congratulations again to Paul on his recent promotion. We also have Alicia Jackson with us, who is our marketing manager. And Alicia has been kind enough to put this presentation together for us. And then, of course, Wiley, our director of sales. We also have Leslie Hobbs with us, who is our product owner. And Leslie is working closely with a lot of higher education institutions to make sure that FMSystems and FM Interact are really up to standard with industry standards for higher education. And then, of course, myself. And with that, we're going to go to the next slide, and we're gonna try to get right in to the presentation from Matt. So thanks again, Matt, for really helping us out with this. So Matt Trickle is the facility planner for university housekeeping at North Carolina State University in Raleigh, North Carolina, where our headquarters, where the FMSystems headquarters is also. And Matt actually has had a great project with data validation, data collection, and using that data in his university housekeeping facilities department to create actionable items such as full-time employee staffing, how certain tasks are allocated and things like that. And he'll really get into detail on the specific data and how he's used that. So we're gonna go ahead and make Matt a presenter now. And Matt, if you want to share your screen when we make you a presenter, it'll give you an option to share whichever screen you want if you have dual screens. And then from there, we'll go through that presentation. Yes, sir. It's all you, Matt. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Well, pleasure to be here. Let me first kind of tell you about the story that caused us to follow this process. When I first came in, we had a computer program called RKA Cleanup, and that was our primary way to actually track data. This was like an old 2003 Access database. It didn't have the ability to update the information. A lot of the processes that we used to calculate the areas, there was no way to update it. So like for cleaning times and stuff like that, we weren't able to update that information. And when we had to update the actual architectural data, it would take probably about a minute and a half just to update like one room, because if you wanted to update all the specific information, not to mention a lot of the information was difficult and very time consuming. We had blueprints upstairs in the drawing room. We had posted PDFs on a website, And we had AutoCAD files on a shared drive. These files were, fairly old. Some of them were 6 months, some of them might be 8 years old. Some of the plans, we had to get some of the updates in the architectural planning room, and they had some of the work that they had been doing on some of the buildings, and that was the only way we could get updated information. So there was no consistency as far as the information went. As far as the architectural data, we had a lot of silo systems here at the university. There was university housekeeping had one set, design and construction had another set. Some of the departments throughout campus, they had their own set. So I mean, there might have been 5 or 6 different data sources. So we needed a way to pull everything from the same well. So we, when we got FMI, that really helped us out. Of course, when it first came on board, housing, they took advantage of the situation. They wanted to know how we calculated FTEs. And we had a few meetings with them, and we butt heads on trying to find an agreement. They thought that our housekeepers weren't really doing any work. Occasionally they would see them sitting down on the job, not getting some things done. And they thought we had way too many people in the building. So we had to validate our FTEs. So they wanted to see the math on how we did it. Well, we didn't have a way of pulling that information up, and there was a lot of architectural descriptions in the way that they described the different spaces. So we had to come up with a plan in order to break all that information up. So we would take the information and we would put it into Excel. The former system, the RKA cleanup, had no exporting capabilities. It had HTML exports, and we had to convert that into an Excel format. And then it had completely different names. So we had 3 different names that we were actually trying to, more or less delineate and try to sort through. So it got to be, very tedious. Anyways, after a lot of, headaches and moving data around, I was able to meet with Sally Rao here at, she's our administrator for FMI here at NC State. And we came up with a plan and to actually come up with housekeeping space uses and be able to put it into the system, similar to the way they did room description. So we had to sort all the rooms. We had like 260 buildings we had to go through. And thank God for VLOOKUP. It was able to come up with some common codes, and we were able to, get a lot of it sorted out. We're still sorting stuff out, but we've got about 92 efficiencies on the different types of space uses in our 260 plus buildings. Our goals and objectives were trying to get like a lot of the information organized so we could actually calculate the FTEs, because I don't know if any of you have done FTE studies before, but a lot of times you have to categorize every single thing in order to, come up with your cleaning times and also your different types of space uses, your cleaning techniques that you use in those different types of space uses. So, we had met with housing at that time. We had, kind of a catastrophe. I don't know if you've ever been in a presentation where your Excel spreadsheets are linked to your desktop. If you ever had that experience, it's not very pleasant. So anyways, I learned a lot from that experience, and we had one of their Excel experts, we sat down together, and I was showing him what we were working on, and he was right on board with it, and he was able to check the math, make sure everything was right, and we're both on the same page. So when you're doing FTE studies, or I should say, when you want to try to organize the data, you need to have, you got to find out what you currently have. Do you have cleanable square feet? Do you have, FTE data? Or I'd say a better question might be, what data do you have at your fingertips without doing your own calculations? Like which categories can you provide data for? And wouldn't it be nice to have this information in all these categories and more, and anytime you need it, and to be able to verify it? Having verifiable data, that's one thing about FMI. Everybody's pulling the same information from the same data source. We have a way we can check our balances, and also it gives FMI, an opportunity to look at the housekeeping data and making sure that their information is correct, or if there's any discrepancies in that regard. We have buildings, zones, space use types, receipt accounts, academics, and appropriated. And just like any other university, and there's probably other departments that we have information for too, that we need to collect information for too. The data preparation by your staffing, you have to have a verifiable database. It helps when all departments have the same source, of course. You want to group the building data. You want to segment it into different types of cleaning method. Cleaning times, must know how long it takes to clean spaces. This is extremely important, and it's probably one of the most difficult parts to actually collect the data because it is a little bit time consuming, but we're working on ways to actually make that a little shorter time. And the service agreements that we have with our customers, we were able to take those, and we have different categories for different types of spaces as far as how often those areas get cleaned. And that's kind of where the idea came from, as far as being able to put the different types of space uses together. Cleaning, we have 260 days in a year that we actually clean the buildings. So we were able to take that, and it means if we say 260, it means it's cleaned every day. Okay, the essential building components we need. Okay, if you, whatever databases you have to have the building name and number, of course. Well, at least the building name and the room number and the name of the room, what's it used for, and then how many square feet. You have this data, you can actually do a lot of the stuff that we've done. I mean, if you just have that, even it's architectural data. So that kind of shows that information there. Okay. Grouping housekeeping space surfaces. You want to group into specific categories with the same type of cleaning frequencies and the measured. You have to have the measured square feet in each one of those areas, and how we clean it. If you look at this, this kind of shows you how architectural data is organized. A lot of times they have several different offices, and you have several different ways to describe the same thing. When we originally went through all the data, when we're trying to delineate it from architectural data to housekeeping space uses, I didn't realize there was probably about 150 ways to actually spell offices, and it was pretty incredible, and we'd have to separate every single one of them. Sometimes some of the codes would be similar, not always, but a lot of times that would save some time. If you've ever had to sort anything like that, it's pretty monumental. We try to keep the housekeeping codes down to around 100. More or less, you have the ability to add more if you have like a receipt or appropriated accounts that you need to be more specific to different types of spaces for certain customers. It would be nice to have a unified housekeeping space use, and that's one thing we're going to talk about here in a little bit. Delineating the cleaning times. Okay, we have the ability to pull up the cleaning times for any of our buildings, or I should say the clean spaces, the cleanable square foot of any of the spaces. We take we multiply the gross square footage times 1 on spaces that we clean, and we multiply it times 0 on the spaces that we do not clean. So that way, when we're going through, we can actually have the FMI add up the total columns, and then they can go ahead and give us the total cleanable square foot of any of the buildings. And if you look right here for this particular building, you notice that we don't count housekeeping closets, and then storage spaces that are no service, we go ahead and put 0 on those. But there's a lot of other areas. You have mechanical closets, telecom closets, HVAC rooms, etc. You have all those type of spaces, not to mention the spaces that different departments want us to stay out of, mostly storage space. Collecting the cleaning time studies. Okay, this is the part that I was saying that's very time consuming. We're able to work with some of the zone managers and get them to complete studies. We had some temps help us work, and we in housing, when we had to do the main study, we had to collect that information. We're still in the process of collecting that for appropriated and academics. We're making progress, but we have to have when it was done, the person's name who was doing the cleaning, the building name and number again, the room space, square feet, and if it's a routine or detailed cleaning. One thing with the routine and detail cleaning, and instead of visiting the space twice, we have, we'll do the routine cleaning first, and then we'll finish it up with the detail, and we'll add the two together to get the detail time. And the routine time would be the original time recorded. So we were able to kind of work with that. Now, when we're working with this information, we have to try to find the cleaning times. We would measure them out into a high, medium, and low. So in other words, a high time, a low time, and a medium time in between. Sometimes we would take those 3 mediums or those 3 parameters and use it for the square footage. We want to keep in the same space use. So the more space uses we have, the better ability or the more of a capability that we have to diversify the cleaning time studies. We want to know, so this will tell us a lot of information when we're doing this. So, when we look at the data and we look at it a year later or 2 years later when we're doing the cleaning time studies, we can look and say, are we doing better or worse? Why are we doing better or worse? Equipment, training, staffing, or any other type of service. Where do we need to focus our services? in the restrooms, dining rooms, corridors, apartments, etc. Which buildings have the highest FT numbers and why? Zones are improving or declining in productivity. Where is all this data coming from, and how does it benefit us as a whole? Which zones lack new time studies, and how often do we need to update that data? So here's kind of a breakdown, a little close-up of what we're doing. You know, we put all this information in. We have a master database. We have it separated in zones. Pull this information when we're doing our FTE studies. We try to make it as easy as possible to fill out, you know, we'll system when we need to. And you have to be persistent with these people. They don't really want a lot of people have a lot of resistance for doing these type of studies. Especially housekeepers, because they think they're being watched. And sometimes they think it's a race. It's not a race, you know, it's not, we're not timing you, we're not watching you, you know, it's just, we want, you know, to work at normal speed. And we don't want you to stretch it out either, like answer your cell phone or, you know, in other words, stall or, you know, just, you know, go really slow either. We want to make sure that it's authentic as possible. And another thing I want to mention here at this point is that when you're doing your own time studies, you're doing it organically. I mean, every institution has different ways of cleaning things. I mean, and also different portions of campus have a different way of cleaning. You have, like, for instance, your vet school, and you have your academic buildings. I mean, they both have offices, but you might have to clean them differently. The same thing with, you know, like, you know, locker rooms. You might have a locker room in a medical building. I mean, it's a lot different cleaning a locker room in a medical building than it would be probably in a athletic facility. So you want to keep within the parameters of which area of campus that you're actually cleaning. So that way you can stay consistent when you're trying to organize your cleaning time studies, and then using that data for whatever purposes you might need. Okay, organizing cleaning time studies. Okay, you want to arrange the studies into groups, as I said before. You know, you want to keep the most important studies at the top of the page because you might be using those more frequently. Keep the same space uses together, like you want to keep all your offices together, all your restrooms together, corridors, etc. Regionalize, you know, where I said the different campuses, you know, where it's important. Store the cleaning time studies on a central database. It makes it easier. And then assign the cleaning time studies to different groups, you know, the appropriate groups when you need the data. Okay, future cleaning time recording application. Okay, this is something that, you know, we were talking about here on campus, and a way to simplify the process of getting the cleaning time studies. And this is just a simple process. You could have an app on your telephone. You know, you would just log in with your Unity identification, you know, wherever the housekeeper, whatever they use to log into their emails. And then you would decide if you want to do routine or detail timing. And then you would scan the door sign. This is where OCR technology could come in handy. And there's a GIS system built into the device. So they would locate which building. So you have the room number and you have the building. So then all you got to do is press start. And then when you're done, you just go ahead and press stop. I mean, it's that simple. So, I mean, this would record the information onto another database. So if we're looking at this page here, we would just have like who cleaned the, you know, who cleaned. You have the Unity ID, you know, and the timer person. And then also the app would record the time of day and the date it was created. And then also when you have the start and stop button feature, it would do this. It would go ahead and tell you, you know, how much time you used to clean that. And then also the building name with the GIS in the app, it would tell you the location with the building number. And then the scanned room number, you could look that up in FMI, and then that information would give us the square feet. So we'd have all that information with just a few clicks of a button. So this is one way we could simplify the process and, you know, kind of quiet people down, the ones that are not very happy about doing it. Okay, cleaning frequencies. Okay, cleaning frequencies, you know, you have to, you know, you have to get them clean. I mean, and you know how we divide it up. You have your daily cleaning, monthly cleaning, bi-weekly, bi-monthly, quarterly, etc. You want to look for space uses that you need to clean more than the assigned and assigned to those spaces. Okay, range. You may want to do it alphabetically and use the ones that you, or maybe stack them, the ones that are more frequently cleaned. Or, and also too, you need to separate the data, daily from non-daily, because daily is easy. Well, it's a different calculation method because you have 5 days you're usually dealing with. You know, you have your 5 work days, and one's usually a detail and there's 4 routines. So what we do is we add all those together and then we divide them by 5 and then we average them out that's how we average them out. So we come up with the data to calculate the FTEs that way. Yeah, well, it's a little more complicated than that, but I'll get into that in a few minutes here. Okay, then when you have your calculations, you have 2 hours. Well, I guess there's really no easy way to explain this, but we have to delineate the housekeeping spaces from the architectural descriptions. This is kind of a summary from what we're doing. Okay, determine the cleanable square footage. We said with the ones and zeros, and then simulate the raw data for a space use, and then multiply the frequency to the raw FTE to determine the actual FTE. I know that doesn't make any sense, but it does make sense if you look at this. All right, yeah, this is where we have to have specific formulas. These formulas were actually processed by APA and ISA as well. ISA uses a very similar process to come up with their formulas they use in their booklets. And as you can tell, it takes the formulas and it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of concentration to put it all together. Now, trying to do this manually on every single building, and if you're trying to do them individually, is crazy insane. I mean, there's just really no way to do it. And if you have a computer system that you can actually use or utilize in order to organize and orchestrate this data, it's going to really help move you forward, and it's going to bring it all together in a little bit more efficiently. I mean, with with FMI, we can do a lot of great stuff with FMI, and I could probably show you some of the stuff that we could do with that at any given time. But anyways, when you're looking at this data here, I mean, it looks very daunting, and I don't want you to be discouraged by looking at this, because there is a better way to actually organize this information. And the main reason I think we need to unify this data is a way to establish methods that can be applied in all institutions. A central area, central area where we can actually talk. We can explore, Android, Apple apps that would make it effortlessly, for doing like those cleaning time studies that I was actually mentioning earlier. And we can explore we have these APA and NISA standards. One thing I really want to mention while I'm talking about those standards that they put into place, they have these different formulas in their booklet, okay, but it's based on their own cleaning time studies that they've done. I've seen some universities actually take this data and they go ahead and they put it in their own spreadsheets. And when I said before that you really need to be organic to the different areas of campus and also to your university in general, I think that's extremely important, because nobody cleans at the same speed. Nobody cleans everything the same way. I mean, there's a lot of diversity in equipment and personnel and training. And in order to be effective with that information, you need to have it at your own institution. And that way, if anyone, and the thing about having that cleaning time studies, if they ask where you got that data from, you can show them. With that information, you have the date, you have the person who did the cleaning, you have the building, you have how much time it took. And if they don't like that information, you can pull it from another study. Or you have a comment section and you can explain that you have the date. Okay, well, that was like right when students got out, and there was a lot of areas that were trashed that day. So you have some way of actually putting it on a seasonal calendar, so you can actually go back and recheck that data. So in other words, it's your documentation that you have this information available, and in case they are wanting to look at it. Okay, if we share the data, it's better communication. Methods work. Compatibility. If we're using the same type of housekeeping space uses, we're more compatible, and we can share that data more freely with other institutions. Training programs, we can show what training programs have worked for our university versus another university, or vice versa. We'll be able to measure those type of things and standards based on our own studies. Saving money, employee relations, and productivity. And then how do we serve our customers? We have more flexibility in services. We could adjust the frequencies as far as, do we need to have someone in that room every day of the week, or can we get by on 2 or 3 days a week? Drastically cutting down the FTEs. Meeting and exceeding expectations in some cases. Saving money, saving time, and when to schedule cleaning, and how we can clean better. innovations, as we're, working with this, and there's a lot to learn on this whole process. Better and faster ways to collect the data, linking the data to mobile devices, where we could pull up the FTE counts on any building from any location. That would be ideal. Making it all easier to understand and operate, and that's essential. And that's why, right now it sounds complicated. Unfortunately, I can show you a lot of the spreadsheets that I've been working on, but when we pull them up, they're going to be just as daunting. Even though I do have some buttons and some cool drop downs that kind of move it around, it still requires myself, because there's a lot of things that some cells might lose formulas or something like that and need someone to work it. So that's why an online system would really help speed us up in this kind of relation. For too long, institutions have been on different pages, with the same goal, when it comes to FT studies. We all have a different method that we use. Most of the time we have our own, someone sitting in front of a computer trying to pull these all together on Excel, and it can be extremely, time consuming. And, frankly speaking, we really don't have to do it. We don't really have time to do this. And then we have to validate, to our customers why we need it. We have to validate to the business and finance office, when they're looking for cuts. Housekeeping is like right on the front, and they get chopped more than any other department in several different ways, either cutting staff or cutting money. We have to do more for less money, and it's extremely just frustrating. Let's just put it that way. So I think that's all I got. So basically, we want to make sure that we can move forward and provide this information for more universities and be able to share the information that we have put together. I have made some videos, our housekeeping module, and we've made several innovations since we put those. So the videos that I'm going to share with you today, that John's going to send out to you, are training videos that we use for our zone managers in order for them to navigate the system. And we have made several innovations since then. We now have floor surfaces in our database as well, where we can color code different floor surfaces, and we can, and it actually has a legend on each page that shows us how many square feet of each type of floor surface that we have on any given floor. And we can break it down to the building, and we can break it down to the zone. So we have all that information. And we also have the different types of space uses. We can take any of those space uses. We can total those space uses for any building, zone, or floor. It's remarkable what we can do these days on this system, and you'll see for yourself when you open up the videos, and you can kind of look at the data there. And I guess I'm done. So thank you for your time. Hello?
That's awesome. Thanks, Matt. We had one question earlier come through from Andrea. Andrea, I know you had a question about if Matt was using APA standards or not. I think he addressed that at one point, but I want to make sure that your question was fully answered.
Yes. Is that the question?
She was asking.
Actually, okay. I'm listening.
Yeah, sorry about that. I had to unmute my line. Yes, so I was kind of chatting and messaging over while you're presenting to actually our projects analyst, because she's the one that tracks the data for, I guess, our staffing needs. And so I thought you mentioned NISA, and I may have gotten that wrong. Which organization is that?
ISSA. Some people might. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I always call it ISA. So it might have came, and on the presentation through the internet, it might have sounded like NISA, but it's ISSA.
Okay.
Yeah, and they go ahead.
Well, so did you have the standards in place before you did your I guess time cleaning studies, or did you, as a byproduct of doing the time studies, move and migrate to the ISA and the APA standards?
Well, that's a good question. Actually, the program that we were using previously, RKA Cleanup, that did all the studies in that particular environment. And like I said, it didn't have any interface capabilities. It left us kind of in the middle of nowhere. Even the programmer, anytime we had any specific questions about how we program, like for instance, cleaning time studies into the thing, we had to call the consultant in, and he would have to come in there, and they would charge us for that fee. So it was kind of like their caveat to get into the university to actually charge us, for services. And we wanted to have a system that we could have and have that data instantly and be able to update that information as seamlessly as possible. Now, when you look at the addressing the question with the APA standards, the previous program did have APA standards, and we took all, and when we were being bombarded by housing, they were insisting that we have to go to APA standards. But if you open up the booklet, and I don't know if you've read those chapters on that, FTE calculations and the methods to do it, it specifically states that every university has the right to put their own levels. They have 5 different levels, and they kind of vaguely describe what each one of those cleaning levels means. In a level 5, or level 1 being, I guess, I guess level 5, I don't know, I get them confused. But anyways, they, being the highest, you have your top level of service, and then it kind of degrades, lower and lower than that. I don't necessarily deal with that as much as I deal with how much time that we put into those areas to clean them, how clean they want those areas. So, I mean, they have the standards outlined in, the APA section, and then we take the information that they classify. So in other words, we clean a room and it says, this is what you want. And then if that's what they want, then we'll go ahead and we'll go with that particular standard. And then we take those matrices of what it took to clean that space. And then we use that, for the rest of those types of space uses. So in regard to the APA standards, yes, we do use those same standards as far as the calculation processes and timing and, versus the square footages of each type of space use.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? I kind of went around a little bit.
No, it did. And I did have one quick, hopefully quick follow-up question.
Okay.
Since it's more in my wheelhouse, when it comes to the tracking of the space uses, one of the things that our institution has become aware of is that even though we've done independently and we're using the APA standards, and it was a different person or department that was handling the actual FTE equivalency and the metrics that we needed to apply or would be comparable to APA, the question has come up of who's actually managing and maintaining if there's a space use change. Because if it's, say, we have remodels, we have renovations, we have capital monies that come in and, if programs that expand, and say it was a unisex public restroom. And, fast forward 16 months and the floor was renovated, and now that room number or that physical space has been recycled as a conference room. Well, clearly public restrooms would have a different cleaning level as opposed to, say, an office or a conference room. Is this something that you've also encountered? And if so, how have you moved forward with this was our previous standard based on the existing spatial data and our space use classifications, but this is how we have to also account for that. Our people in the field are more aware of that than, say, the data managers who would be in the office updating and doing the ongoing maintenance of the data itself.
Well, that's an excellent question, and I really have to. I mean, I have a lot of knowledge in that area. When I first, one of my positions is I'm the PPA portal, for design reviews for design and construction. So I have firsthand look at a lot of the floor plans, when they're doing before they do a lot of the different types of works. But I mean, we still have independent contractors that come on campus, and a lot of times, it doesn't go through the normal channels, and there's a lot, because different departments. I mean, they're trying to save money, so they hire somebody outside. They don't always do it up to the standards, but when you change a room, we have pretty good reconnaissance in our Office of University Architects, but we don't have we don't have all the information, and that's when we have in housekeeping we have close to 300 housekeepers out there on foot, in these buildings. So, and we also write work schedules, for those housekeepers. So if they're in an area cleaning and they come across one of the rooms, they go, hey, this isn't an office. They got this as a conference room now, or let's even worse yet, let's just say it's a break room. It used to be an office, so we have office cleaning once a month, and then all of a sudden they want us to clean its break room, which means that we have to go in there and clean it every day. So that's changing the services. So a lot of times when that kind of situation or any situation in that realm happens, I emphasize to the zone managers, I says, you're getting gypped on time. You're having your housekeeper clean the space, and we did not allocate that space to be, that much more work. So, I mean, it's the responsibility of the departments to update that information into the architectural database. And we can actually refuse to clean that room until they update it into the system. Once they're aware of that, they'll go ahead and they'll update that information. It's kind of funny. Sometimes they'll turn a closet into an office and say, hey, this is Dan's office. He's got a cell phone. It's like, no, you can't do that, So, but I mean, it's kind of a check and balance system, though, because we have a comparable database where our information is updated. I have an assistant that actually helps me update this information. And he's been great. I mean, but we have to work consistently with the zone managers. I mean, there's holes in the data. Sometimes, I'm not cutting FMI down because it's been a learning curve for everybody on this whole situation. But sometimes, every once in a while, data just drops off the system. Hasn't happened in a while, but we'll have like a section of a building just like boom, the data's gone. So we have to go back in our records and pull it out, and we usually can pull it back up and push it into the system. So that's kind of how we handle that situation. Does that answer your question?
It does, and I think it helps at least propose scenarios that we can look at. So
yeah.
Thank you. That definitely helps, and I was just kind of curious twofold how that played out as you developed this standard and this process for your university.
Yeah, great. One thing I want to continue on that is we do have the ability we have two different methods that we can use to update the information of the spaces. We can click on the individual rooms, and if we have a whole floor to do, we can actually take the information and put it onto a spreadsheet, and we have 50 or 100 rooms. Instead of doing them all manually and clicking on each room, we can actually take that information and push it up into the system. And one thing that we've been able to utilize is we have a whole floor of offices, for example. We can click several of those rooms, by holding down the control key, and then we can enter in office for each one of those spaces. So we can, put in 20 offices with just, in about probably maybe 0.5% of the time that it would take to do it manually and open it up. So it's a good time saver. We're always thinking of ways to, make the job easier and faster.
Thank you. That helps.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, sure. Matt Barr here,
Okay.
over at Drexel. Yeah, just wondering, do you have multiple other groups within the university outside of housekeeping that are utilizing FMI and, doing their own updates and things like that?
Doing it the same way we do it, I don't believe so, but they do have their different departments. They have, they have specific needs, and actually Salary Rao, our administrator here, could probably give you a more enlightening answer to that question. I deal primarily just with the housekeeping department. I'm not really directly involved with some of the other departments, but I do know for a fact they are using it. One thing I will say too is the GIS system that's in the FMI, they have a lot of those links to the buildings. And one thing that's really unique on that, we have all of our zone manager information into the system. So anytime, and we have the housekeeping zone attached to the building number in the FMI system. So when they're updating the maps, they pull up a CAD drawing in their GIS system, and they can, it's actually a different program, but you basically get the idea. And what they do is they can assign colors to those different codes, and that's how we create our zone maps. It just takes it and it just pumps it right in there. So if we change our zones, which we've been doing a little bit of that lately, and it's for me, for a data person, it's crazy, because I've got to also update the website as well. But anyways, we can, periodically do it 2 or 3 times a year, where we update the GIS map, and it's an interactive map. So if you pull it up, you can go ahead and go to the specific areas of campus, click on the building, and it has all of the zone manager information on it. It's pretty cool. I invite anyone to check out our housekeeping website. I could actually send that too as well. You can kind of get an idea of the zone map if you guys are interested.
Thanks for the answer, and I'd love to see that website if you have
Okay. Yeah,
later.
sure.
Thanks, Matt. Anybody else have any questions? All right. Well, if any questions come up later, y'all are welcome to reach out to John. I know Janet Wheeler on the line asked if this presentation was going to be sent out. I believe it is, along with some of the YouTube videos and other resources that Matt's provided. So great presentation, Matt. Really appreciate you taking the time to do this. Always really interesting to see, how our higher ed clients are using this in unique ways. So really appreciate that.
Yes, thank you so much, Matt. And thank you everyone for joining and to everyone who's asked questions. And if you do have any questions, when I email out the presentations and the YouTube training videos that Matt created, please feel free to establish contact with me, ask as many questions as you want. We're always here to help as a resource. So with that being said, I'm going to hand the floor to Alicia Jackson, who's our marketing manager. Thanks again so much, Matt, and I'll follow up with you later. And we're going to let Alicia talk a little bit about our user conference, which is taking place in April.